The twin suns of Krythar 4 scorched the red sands, painting the desert in gold and fire. Dust storms blew across jagged rock formations, howling like ghosts of a long-dead world. Human settlements clung to the edges of this harsh planet, tiny islands of survival in a land ruled by alien dragons. These beasts were not myths. They were engineered predators, massive wings blotting out the sun, eyes that burned like molten metal, and jaws strong enough to crush steel. Every human knew the cost of wandering too far from safety. Captain Ryland Dax stood on the edge of the highest dune near the settlement of Vera Outpost, scanning the horizon through a cracked visor. His boots sank into the hot sand with every step. The wind carried the faint scent of sulfur and ozone. He tightened his jaw as the alarm blinked across his wrist communicator. A hatchling had been spotted near the salt flats, a baby dragon, alone and weak. The elders of Vera gathered in the central hall, arguing in urgent tones. "It's too far. Let nature take its course," said one, rubbing the crease of worry between his eyes. "It won't survive. Sending a human is a death sentence." Ryland's eyes hardened. "Then let us prove them wrong," he said. His voice was low, calm, but carried the weight of steel. "We don't survive by walking away. We survive by acting, by choosing courage even when it scares us." He turned, strapping a thin cloak across his shoulders and checking his speeder's turbines. The machine hummed and whirred, a lifeline against the desert's deadly heat. He slid onto it, hands steady on the controls. The hatchling was far beyond the dunes, in a place where the sand cracked into molten fissures and storms of plasma dust twisted unpredictably. Every second counted. As the speeder lifted off, a gust of hot wind nearly threw him sideways. Ryland forced it steady, eyes fixed ahead. Memories of previous scouts lost to the desert sharpened his focus. He had seen friends swallowed by sinkholes, torn apart by rogue wyverns, or fried by sudden energy storms. He knew the odds and he knew he would not fail, not this time. The journey was brutal. Plasma storms whipped around the cliffs, stinging exposed skin despite his protective gear. Acid rain hissed across the metal of his speeder. He dodged jagged rocks that erupted from the sands like teeth. Even the wind seemed alive, testing him at every turn. And all the while, the thought of the hatchling burned in his mind. Small, fragile, alone. If he didn't reach it soon, it would die. Hours passed. Ryland scanned the horizon obsessively. The heat shimmered in waves, bending the light, hiding the flats in a mirage of orange and gold. And then, finally, a shadow moved. A tiny shape trembling against the salt-white sands. The hatchling. Its scales flickered dimly like dying embers. It tried to stand, but its legs collapsed under it. Its mouth opened in a silent cry that tugged at something deep in Ryland's chest. The human instinct to survive was strong, but the human heart even stronger. He leapt from his speeder, landing on the sand with a thud, boots sinking. He crawled to the hatchling, eyes scanning the area. Danger was everywhere. One wrong step, one moment of hesitation, and either he or the hatchling could die instantly. The twin suns were setting fast, and with night came predators. Ryland's hands hovered over the hatchling, trying to assess it. Its breathing was shallow, weak, and its scales were dull. The water supply nearby had long since dried to salt dust. Without intervention, it would not last the night. He reached into his pack, pulling out a microhydration injector and emergency nutrient gel. Not perfect, not enough, but maybe enough to stabilize it. His fingers shook slightly, not with fear but with adrenaline, with the weight of responsibility. A sudden gust of wind shifted the sand beneath him. Ryland froze. The ground cracked and hissed under pressure, and a fissure opened near his feet. He slid dangerously close to the edge, the hatchling almost tumbling with him. He braced, anchoring his boots in the sand and dragging the creature back to solid ground. The desert seemed to roar in anger, as if punishing him for daring to defy it. He set the hatchling down, leaning over it, whispering, "Hold on. Just hold on." The wind tore at his cloak, sand stinging his face. He had hours to figure a way to save it. Hours to act before this tiny life was lost forever. And then in the distance, a shadow moved. Larger, faster, and darker than any dune or rock formation. Something was watching, something with wings strong enough to slice through steel and claws ready to snatch. Ryland's pulse raced. His eyes narrowed. Whatever this was, it was heading straight for them. He clenched his jaw and reached for the speeder's emergency flare launcher. "All right," he muttered, "let's see what it takes to survive, and save this hatchling." The shadow drew closer, massive wings blotting the last rays of the suns. Ryland's grip tightened. The desert wasn't done testing him yet. And neither was fate. Ryland's heart pounded as the shadow grew larger. It was a wyvern, its scales black as night, eyes burning like molten coals. Wings spread wide, stirring gusts that tore at the sand and threatened to knock him off balance. The hatchling whimpered, its tiny body quivering beneath him. He shoved it behind a jagged rock formation, shielding it from sight. The wyvern circled, claws scraping the stone, its scream echoing across the salt flats. Ryland's mind raced. There was no time for hesitation. He fired a flare from the speeder's emergency launcher. The brilliant light flashed across the dunes, momentarily blinding the predator. The wyvern recoiled but did not leave. Ryland's teeth clenched. He needed another plan fast. Scanning the terrain, he spotted a narrow canyon to the east, its jagged cliffs creating a natural barrier. He lifted the hatchling into the speeder, strapping it safely in front of him. The machine groaned as he kicked the turbines to life, propelling them across the scorching sand. The wyvern followed, swooping low, wings slicing the air like blades. Every twist, every turn, Ryland calculated with precision. One wrong move and both would die. The canyon was treacherous. Sharp rock jutting from the sides could rip through the speeder's hull. The plasma storms raged overhead, arcs of blue electricity dancing dangerously close. Ryland weaved between obstacles, feeling the heat of the lightning brush past his face. The hatchling cried out at each near miss. Ryland gritted his teeth. He couldn't afford panic, not for himself, not for it. Suddenly the sand beneath them shifted violently. A sinkhole, hidden beneath a thin crust, swallowed part of the canyon floor. The speeder lurched, tilting dangerously. Ryland slammed a foot down to stabilize, skidding across loose gravel. The hatchling tumbled forward, but he caught it with one arm, his other hand gripping the controls. A gust of wind slammed against them, nearly tipping the machine into the abyss. He forced the speeder forward, heart hammering. He could feel the wyvern closing in, its shadow blotting out the rising sun. Its screech echoed through the canyon, a sound designed to paralyze prey with fear. Ryland forced himself to focus. Fear was a tool, not a chain. He pushed the speeder over a small ridge, gaining precious distance, then dropped it into a narrow ravine where the wyvern's wings were too wide to follow. The hatchling whimpered softly, exhausted, its tiny body trembling. Ryland leaned down, speaking in a calm voice he didn't fully feel. "You're safe for now. Just hold on." His hands checked its scales. They were dry, brittle, and pale. Without water, without nutrients, it would not last. He looked at the emergency pack again. Microhydration injector, nutrient gel, filtered water. Not ideal, but it might give the hatchling a fighting chance. Hours passed, each moment stretching like an eternity. The desert seemed alive, testing their endurance. Acid rain hissed against the speeder, plasma arcs struck dangerously close, and rogue scavenger drones, remnants of alien wars, tracked their heat signature. Ryland ducked and weaved, using rock formations as cover, luring drones into deep fissures where they were destroyed or trapped. Every move required precise timing, every breath counted. At one point, a sudden plasma storm forced him to abandon the speeder temporarily. He ran across open sand, the hatchling cradled in his arms, sparks of lightning dancing around them. He could feel the electricity in his bones, the ozone burning his lungs, yet he refused to stop. To falter now would mean certain death for both of them. Finally, he found a small, shallow crevice where the wind was slightly blocked. He set the hatchling down gently, tears stinging his eyes from sweat and dust. It struggled to lift its head, barely responsive. Ryland placed the microhydration injector under its tiny jaw, carefully administering tiny doses of water. The hatchling gasped, tiny limbs twitching as the liquid hit its throat. He followed with nutrient gel, whispering encouragement. Ryland knew this was only the beginning. The desert was merciless, and the night would bring colder temperatures and predators even more dangerous than the wyvern. He looked out at the horizon, scanning for any sign of shelter, any safe passage back to the settlement. Every ridge and canyon seemed to shift under the twin suns, a labyrinth of danger. The wyvern had not given up. Its shadow stretched across the distant dunes, wings slicing through the air with lethal precision. It circled, clearly waiting, hunting, watching. Ryland clenched his fists. They would not fall, not while he still had breath, not while he still had wit. As he prepared to lift the hatchling back onto the speeder, a strange shimmer appeared on the horizon. Something alive, or maybe alien technology, glimmered faintly beneath the storm haze. Ryland squinted, trying to make sense of it. A hidden water source? Or a trap? He didn't know. But he did know one thing. The hatchling's survival depended on him taking the risk. He took a deep breath, tightened his grip on the controls, and prepared to move forward into the unknown. The desert was testing them, yes, but humans were never meant to simply endure. They were meant to rise. And now, in the shadow of death and storms, Rylan would prove it. The shimmer on the horizon grew, but Rylan had no time to analyze it. Every second counted. The hatchling's breaths were shallow, its tiny chest rising and falling with difficulty. Its scales were dry, fragile like thin metal and pale under the fading suns. He knew instinct alone wouldn't save it. This required thinking, inventing, pushing the boundaries of what a human could do. He scanned his pack. There was enough water to wet its throat, enough nutrient gel to keep it alive for a few hours, and the microinjector to administer it. But that wouldn't be enough for long. The desert was merciless. Without a proper hydration source, the hatchling would die before he could reach the settlement. Rylan's eyes fell on the tools and scraps he had collected during past expeditions. Coils of alloy wire, a small energy converter, a compact condenser unit designed to extract water from the air. It had been left behind by the alien colonists centuries ago, abandoned as humanity reclaimed the planet. Most humans ignored it, calling it useless. But Rylan wasn't most humans. Maybe this can work, he muttered. The idea formed in his mind, clear and daring, a microcondensation system. He could extract moisture from the atmosphere, filter it, and channel it directly into the hatchling's throat using the injector as a delivery mechanism. It was risky. He had no guarantee the system would function in this environment. One miscalculation and both he and the hatchling could be electrocuted, or worse, caught by the wyvern while distracted. He worked quickly, sweat stinging his eyes, hands moving over wires and alloy with precision. The hatchling whimpered, its body too weak to move. Rylan's jaw tightened. Every second he spent was a gamble, but hesitation meant certain death. The condenser hissed to life, its small core glowing faintly blue. He adjusted the flow, careful not to shock the hatchling. A tiny droplet of water appeared at the injector's tip. Rylan held his breath. Come on. Come on. He gently applied the tip to the hatchling's jaw. The creature swallowed. Another drop. And another. Its chest began to rise a little stronger, its eyes flickering with life. Relief washed over him, but he didn't allow himself to celebrate. There was more work to do. Above them, the wyvern's shadow darkened the canyon. It was circling, waiting for the hatchling to weaken, for him to falter. Rylan scanned the ridges, searching for a way to use the environment to their advantage. He noticed jagged cliffs that could force the predator into narrow spaces where its wings wouldn't fit. An idea sparked. A trap, a chance to buy time. He gently lifted the hatchling back into the speeder, securing it as best he could. Then he guided the machine toward a narrow gap between cliffs. The wyvern followed, diving low, wings slicing the air dangerously close. Rylan accelerated, weaving through the rocky corridor, forcing the predator to tilt and twist awkwardly. The wings scraped the rock, sparks flying. The wyvern let out a scream of frustration and retreat. Rylan exhaled sharply. Not today, he muttered. His focus shifted back to the hatchling. The microcondensation system continued to feed it water drop by drop. He adjusted the flow, making sure each drop entered steadily. Its tiny limbs twitched, and for the first time since he found it, the hatchling made a weak chirp. It was enough. Enough to know that life, fragile but persistent, still clung to this world. Hours dragged on, each moment a careful balance of speed and caution. He tested the injector, ensuring the flow was steady. The hatchling's breathing grew stronger, its scales regaining a slight shimmer. The desert was still treacherous, storms forming above, sand whipping into his face, but Rylan refused to stop. Human determination burned brighter than the twin suns. He glanced toward the horizon and noticed another obstacle, a patch of electrified sand, remnants of old alien security fields. One misstep and the speeder, or worse the hatchling, would be fried instantly. Rylan's fingers danced over the controls, timing each movement perfectly. He angled the speeder to avoid the fields, weaving in a path no machine could calculate alone. Only human intuition, courage, and adaptability could get them through. Finally, as night began to fall, Rylan found a small, shallow basin that had collected moisture. The condenser hummed, pulling droplets from the air. He set the hatchling down gently. It drank steadily now, lapping up life from a system that combined alien technology with human ingenuity. Its scales glimmered faintly under the first stars. Rylan smiled, exhaustion and relief battling in his chest. But even as he allowed himself a brief moment of hope, he knew the desert was far from defeated. The wyvern had not disappeared, it waited somewhere beyond the dunes, patient and hungry. The next move would be the most dangerous yet. Rylan looked down at the hatchling, now flickering with renewed energy. "You've survived the storm," he whispered. "Now we survive the night." The twin suns had set, leaving a cold, star-studded sky above. The desert's trials were far from over. And Rylan, human and unbroken, prepared for the next challenge, knowing that ingenuity and courage might be the only things standing between life and death. The night was alive with danger. Krythar Ivy's twin suns had set, leaving the desert cold and dark. Shadows stretched across jagged dunes, and the wind carried the scent of salt, ozone, and scorched earth. Rylan Dax adjusted the hatchling in his arms, its tiny body trembling, yet stronger than before thanks to the microcondensation system he had built. Every breath it drew felt like a victory. But he knew the hardest part was ahead, bringing it safely back to the settlement. The speeder hummed under him, its turbines cutting through the desert's black silence. Ahead lay the treacherous plains, where molten fissures, collapsing rock bridges, and rogue energy storms made even a straight path lethal. Rylan gritted his teeth. He had survived storms, wyverns, and collapsing terrain before, but now carrying a fragile life on his back raised the stakes beyond anything he had faced. A sudden gust of plasma wind slammed against him, rattling the speeder violently. He tightened his grip, leaning into the machine, feeling the vibrations through every bone. The hatchling let out a small cry, startled. Rylan murmured, "I've got you. Just hold on." He pushed the turbines to their maximum output, weaving between jagged outcrops. Sparks flew from the rocks as he narrowly avoided collisions. Then came the drones. Small, wiry machines, remnants of the alien colonists' surveillance network, patrolling the plains. They homed in on heat and motion, buzzing through the night like metallic hornets. Rylan spotted them in time, skidding the speeder behind a fallen spire of rock. The drones followed, laser eyes scanning. Rylan cursed under his breath, calculating. One misstep and the hatchling would be vaporized along with him. He remembered a lesson from the scouts' manuals: patience and improvisation often won where brute force failed. Using the speeder's heat disperser, he emitted a false heat signature to lure the drones into a narrow ravine. The machines followed blindly, only to tumble into the canyon below. Sparks and small explosions lit the night, a deadly reminder of the desert's dangers. Rylan exhaled, sweat stinging his eyes, and glanced down at the hatchling. It chirped faintly. "Alive. For now." The plains stretched before them like a labyrinth. A collapsing rock bridge loomed ahead, its edges crumbling into a molten fissure below. Rylan weighed his options. There was no alternative route. Going back would mean certain exposure to the wyvern that still prowled beyond the dunes. Forward was the only choice. He engaged the speeder's stabilizers and revved the turbines. The machine leapt across the gap, shaking violently as it landed. Dust and debris clouded the canyon floor, and for a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as though the bridge would give way. The hatchling squealed, clutching at him instinctively. Rylan whispered, almost there," his pulse raced. The settlement's lights were just visible in the distance, tiny specks against the black desert. Every dune between them was a gauntlet, every ridge a potential death trap. And then a roar shattered the night. The wyvern had returned, larger than ever in the moonless darkness, wings beating the air with force strong enough to topple rocks. Its eyes glowed, focused solely on the hatchling. Rylan's chest tightened. The predator had calculated, and now it struck. There was no time to think. Instinct and courage took over. He veered the speeder sharply, drawing the wyvern toward a canyon where its wings would be restricted. The beast followed, struggling against the narrow walls. Rylan pushed the machine to its limits, skidding past molten fissures, leaping over jagged rocks, guiding the hatchling through the gauntlet of death with precision and nerve. A sudden plasma storm erupted, arcs of blue electricity striking dangerously close. Rylan ducked, shielding the hatchling while steering with the backs of his hands. Sparks flew across the hull, burning hot, but he ignored the pain. Every second counted. Human ingenuity, courage, and determination were their only shields. Finally, after what felt like hours compressed into minutes, the settlement's dome appeared, glowing softly in the night. Rylan's heart lifted. There were people inside, humans, waiting, watching. But he wasn't safe yet. The last ridge remained, a steep climb lined with jagged rock. He accelerated, firing small stabilizing flares from the speeder to keep the hatchling secure. The wyvern attempted a final dive, claws extended, teeth bared. Rylan twisted the speeder at the last possible moment, narrowly dodging its attack. The predator screeched in frustration, unable to follow into the protective energy dome surrounding the settlement. Rylan exhaled sharply, tears stinging his eyes. He lifted the hatchling carefully, placing it on the soft sand inside the dome. Its tiny chest rose and fell steadily, eyes flickering with life restored. Children and elders approached, awestruck by the miracle before them. Rylan knelt beside the hatchling, brushing dust and sweat from his face. "You're safe," he whispered. "We made it." The hatchling chirped, nuzzling his hand. It was more than a creature, it was proof. Proof that human courage, ingenuity, and determination could defy impossible odds. Krythar IV's desert was lethal, its predators merciless, its storms relentless. Yet a human, armed only with wit, resolve, and compassion, had saved life from death. Rylan looked up at the stars, exhausted but unbroken. The twin suns would rise again soon, and life would continue in the desert. But tonight, humans had triumphed, not through strength alone but through ingenuity, courage, and the refusal to surrender. The hatchling chirped again, wings quivering with tentative strength. And somewhere beyond the dunes, the wyvern lingered, defeated but alive, a reminder that danger would always exist. Yet for the first time in Krythar IV's harsh night, hope had a heartbeat, carried on human hands. Rylan smiled faintly, weary but victorious. The hatchling was safe, the settlement alive, and humanity had once again proven that even in a world of monsters and storms, courage, intelligence, and determination could turn the impossible into reality. Dawn broke over Vera Outpost, spilling pale light across the desert dunes. The twin suns rose slowly, bathing the settlement in warmth, though the cold of the night still clung to the shadows. Rylan Dax sat near the hatchling, which had curled safely beneath a blanket of soft fabric. Its chest rose steadily now, eyes alert and shimmering with newfound life. For the first time he allowed himself to breathe fully. Word of his journey had already spread. Humans gathered cautiously around the small protective dome where the hatchling rested. Children peeked through the transparent walls, wide-eyed with wonder. Elders, normally stoic and reserved, approached with respect that bordered on reverence. No one spoke at first. The sight of the tiny dragon, alive against all odds, was proof that humans could achieve the extraordinary. Rylan looked up at them, fatigue etched across his face. He tried to shrug modestly, but the elders shook their heads. "You didn't just survive, Captain," one said, his voice low, carrying both awe and gratitude. "You showed every human here what it means to fight when hope seems lost." The hatchling stretched, lifting its tiny wings and chirping softly. Children reached toward it, and it hesitated for a moment before nuzzling against a small hand. Laughter and cheers erupted, a rare sound in a world defined by survival and danger. Rylan smiled faintly, feeling a warmth that had little to do with the suns and everything to do with human spirit. Even as the settlement celebrated, Rylan knew the desert still held dangers. Rogue wyverns roamed, storms could strike without warning, and the alien remnants scattered across Krythar 4 remained unpredictable. Yet for the first time he felt a profound certainty. Humans could rise above their environment, not merely endure it. Courage, intelligence, and determination were stronger than fear or even the deadliest predators. He knelt beside the hatchling, running a hand gently along its scales. "You've got a long life ahead," he murmured, "and I'll do everything I can to make sure it survives. But remember, you're part of something bigger now. You're proof." A child tugged at his cloak. "Will it really grow up?" she asked, eyes wide with curiosity and hope. Rylan looked down at her and nodded. "It will. And it will remind all of us what humans can do when we refuse to give up." The elders began organizing a small sanctuary within the dome. Rylan explained the microcondensation system, showing how it could be used to sustain other creatures or even small human farms in the harsh desert. The hatchling became a symbol, yes, but also a lesson. Resourcefulness, courage, and careful planning could bend the rules of a world that seemed designed to destroy life. Later, Rylan stepped outside the dome, looking over the settlement. Smoke rose from water condensers, the soft hum of turbines blending with the morning wind. Humans moved with purpose, eyes bright with renewed determination. Some looked at him with quiet admiration, others simply shook their heads in disbelief. One thing was clear: hope had returned. The wyvern that had stalked them during the night was gone now, retreating to distant cliffs, but its presence remained in memory, a reminder that danger would never disappear. Yet humanity's courage and ingenuity had prevailed. Rylan allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. He had faced storms, predators, and the impossible, and he had won, not through luck but through skill, determination, and an unyielding heart. A soft chirp broke his reverie. The hatchling had climbed to the edge of the dome, wings twitching as it gazed at the rising suns. Its tiny form was fragile, but its eyes burned with life. Children and adults watched silently, knowing they were witnessing something rare, a living testament to human resilience. Ryland's thoughts wandered. He imagined the hatchling growing, perhaps eventually soaring above the desert skies. Its survival would not just be a story of a single creature, but a legend of human bravery, of ingenuity that defied fate, of morality that refused to abandon life even when the odds were impossible. He knew there would be other challenges ahead. The desert would remain unkind, the predators relentless, and the alien remnants mysterious and dangerous. But humanity had been reminded of its own strength. One person, acting with courage and intelligence, could change the course of life itself. That was the essence of being human. As the twin suns climbed higher, casting long shadows across the dunes, Ryland returned to the hatchling. He crouched beside it, brushing sand from its scales. "We made it," he whispered. "Not just you, not just me, but all of us." Around him, humans began rebuilding, carrying water, checking turbines, securing shelters. The settlement hummed with life, laughter, and quiet pride. Every action, every careful step, was proof that survival was not enough. Humans could thrive even on worlds that seemed impossible. The hatchling chirped again, a small, joyful sound. Ryland smiled. Its life had been saved by courage and intelligence, but more than that, it symbolized what humans could do when they refused to surrender. Hope, determination, and morality, these were the weapons no predator, no storm, no desert could ever destroy. And in that moment, Krythar 4 was no longer just a planet of danger. It was a planet where humans had risen, not merely surviving but proving that life could flourish even against impossible odds. The hatchling lifted its wings, preparing to take its first real flight, and Ryland watched with a quiet pride that only humans who dared to face the impossible could feel. Life endured. Humanity endured. And together they had carved a victory against fate itself.